Hello, I'm CrimsonAce and welcome to Let's Play The Legend of Zelda from 1986, which, considering I did the All-Stars version of Super Mario Bros., might just be the oldest game I'm ever gonna play on this channel. Unless I feel the sudden need to do a Pong Let's Play, but I don't think it's gonna happen anytime soon. Anyway, what's gonna be happening in this game? Well, we have this little story summary at the beginning here. Many years ago, Prince Darkness Ganon stole one of the Triforce with power. Princess Zelda had one of the Triforce with wisdom. She divided it into 8 units to hide it from Ganon before she was captured. Go find the 8 units, Link, to save her. And trust me folks, if you thought that mistranslation was bad, just wait for what's to come. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to give a better summary than whatever that was. The story is set in the land of Hyrule, where a certain power exists known as the Triforce. This power is split into 3 pieces: the Triforce of Wisdom, the Triforce of Courage and the Triforce of Power. The Triforce of Wisdom belongs to the princess of the land, Princess Zelda. The Triforce of Power is in possession of a beast known as Ganon, which is gonna be our villain of this series, later given a human form by the name of Ganondorf. He wants to obtain all 3 pieces, so he captured Princess Zelda, but before he could do so, she made sure to split the Triforce into 8 different pieces. Now it's up to our player character Link, who has the Triforce of Courage, to recollect all 8 pieces and use it to defeat the evil Ganon and save Princess Zelda, because you can't have a video game without a princess to save in these days. Now then, it's gameplay time. Like I said, the Triforce is split into 8 pieces and these are scattered in 8 different dungeons. So the way this game is set up is that you have this big overworld, which we're in right now, and in this overworld there are the 8 different dungeons that you need to find first. The dungeons itself are basically the levels. You need to find the right way to progress and get to the end to collect the Triforce piece, and then you're booted out of the dungeon to go to the next one. And then there's the overworld, which doesn't really have a point A to point B. Instead, this is a place to explore, not only to find the dungeons, but there's also a whole bunch of other stuff you can find here. All kinds of stuff you'll be seeing later in this playthrough. Next on the agenda is controls, though there's not a lot to explain. It's all very basic. You move up, down, left and right. You can use your sword with the A button, use whatever item you have selected with the B button, though we don't have any items yet. And that's pretty much all the controls. All the other stuff is done by walking into it. Now to explain all the stuff that's on the top of the screen. First you have this big grey square, which is your map, though it doesn't have a whole lot on it, only a tiny green square, which is to tell where you are on the map. There's the number of rupees you have. We currently have 15, and rupees are pretty much your currency, the money you have. Then underneath that you see how many keys you have, though keys are only ever used within the dungeons. Underneath that is how many bombs you have. We'll get the bombs later. Then there's the B button to show what item you currently have selected. The blue square next to it is to show what sword you're currently using, and next to that is the life bar, which is divided into hearts. As you can see on the screen, hearts can also be dropped by enemies to refill some health that you may have lost. And if you are at full health, then your wooden sword can somehow shoot laser beams. No one ever said it had to make sense. Anyway, enemies can also drop other things such as rupees and even bombs. Sadly, I wasn't lucky enough to get any bomb drops, so I'm gonna have to buy them from this guy for 20 rupees. So now we have 4 bombs, though the max we can carry at this point is actually 8 bombs. Bombs are probably the most important item to explore the overworld, and they're also used a lot in the dungeons, so the point is bombs are important. Therefore I don't really use them a lot to defeat enemies. But you can if you want to, and they're pretty effective, but I like to have bombs with me at all times, because you often need them to open a secret passage or something. Not that it's that big of a worry, because bomb drops from enemies are pretty frequent. Though they're not as frequent as, let's say, the hearts or the rupees, though there are less frequent items. Like one we're gonna see in just a second. That is the stopwatch. When you pick it up, it freezes all enemies on the screen and it makes Link invincible until he leaves to the next screen. And there are also other rare item drops, which are the fairies, which are worth 5 hearts, and the blue rupees, which are worth 5 rupees. Though there are occasions where you get lucky with the item drops. 3, 2, 1, bombs. So now we have 8 bombs, which for the moment is all we can carry. Well, in terms of amount of bombs at least, there's still plenty of other stuff we can carry, and that is with the sword and the shield. Oh, I forgot to explain how the shield works. As you can tell, Link is carrying a shield, but it's not really a separate item, instead it's always active. It's not super useful, it can only block a few projectiles and only from the front, and not while using your sword. The only projectiles it can block right now are the rocks from the Octoroks and the arrows from the Moblins. And speaking of Moblins, we just ran into one who told us it's a secret to everyone and then he gave us rupees. What happened there is that he's pretty much bribing us to not tell anyone that he's in there. There are a few other places like that where you can make rupees that way if you know where to find them, and unless you have a guide with you, you're not. Without a map, the only other way you're gonna know that they're there is if you happen to bomb every single fucking wall, because there is zero indication to tell that there's something behind certain walls or you can burn certain bushes. This is one of those NES games where an external map is pretty much required, much like the first Metroid game, but I'll get into that later. Though we are gonna get an example of that in a few seconds. But before that, we just ran into an old man who gave us the blue letter and he told us to show it to an old woman. That's gonna come into play a bit later, though I recommend picking that up as soon as you can. But now we are about to get our first heart container by bombing this wall, which you had no way of knowing that that wall could be bombed. And in here we meet an old man who gives us the option between picking a red potion or a heart container. What the red potion does I'll explain later. More importantly, always pick the heart container. There are plenty of other ways you can get red potions, but if you don't pick the heart container, then that heart container is gone forever, and those are the items you're most gonna want. What the heart container does is increase your health by 1 heart, as you can see by the life counter. So finding heart containers is pretty much essential for your survival. Pretty much like the E-tanks in the Metroid series, and I'm gonna bring up Metroids a few more times later in this playthrough. And I always find them satisfying to find. They're your reward for exploring the overworld. And the whole go out of your way to find a reward is where the whole fun comes from in these exploration type games. And it might sound odd that I'm using the word explore when I already said that you're really supposed to use a map. But in this case, exploring also means traveling from place to place in the right order, plan out your route and making sure you have the right item when you get there. And once again, I'll explain this whole why you should use a map thing later, but if you've seen my Let's Play of Metroid, you know already. Anyway, even though there's still a lot more to do in the overworld before going to the first dungeon, that's really out of your way and I prefer to just get those things when it's convenient for me, so we're gonna enter the first dungeon right now, which is right here. This is the Eagle Dungeon. The dungeons are pretty straightforward, just find the right item and get to the end. Sometimes you also need a key to open certain doors, so then you simply go looking for the key and when you find it, go back to that door. The dungeons are pretty standard and simple in terms of knowing what you need to do, but the dungeons are also where the difficulty is at, because this is where all the tough enemies hang out and where you're gonna fight bosses. Though it's not really gonna show here because this is still just the first dungeon. Well, it's technically the first dungeon. It is known as dungeon number 1, as you can see in the corner. Well, it's called level 1, but still they're dungeons. But it doesn't mean you have to do this one first. I prefer to just go to dungeons in order, but if you want to, you can go to dungeon 2 or 3 first. Now you can't really do them in any order, because sometimes you need like an item from an earlier dungeon to even get to the next dungeon. But you can definitely change things up in a number of different ways if you want to. Later Zelda games are gonna be a lot more strict with that. In fact, I think this is like the most non-linear one, with exception of maybe A Link Between Worlds. I mean, it's still kinda there in some other Zelda games, but most of them are gonna do dungeon 1, 2 and 3 all in the same order every time. It's actually pretty similar to what I explained in the Pokemon Let's Play, where the first generation of Pokemon is pretty much the only one where you can do the gyms in all kinds of different orders. Right there you can see an item that is pretty much in every single one of the dungeons. That is the compass. It's not terribly useful in this game, all it does is show off where the Triforce piece is at, but I still bother to go out of my way to collect the compass every single time. Like I said, each dungeon has its own compass. It's more useful in later Zelda games, where it also shows where you are on the map, which in this game we don't need the compass for that, it's already there. And it also shows off in later games where all the treasure is at. Oh, this is something I need to talk about. On the left there you see a closed door without a keyhole, and then you need to do this. Usually whenever you see a door like that, you need to find the right block to push, and you also need to push it in the right direction. Though there are also cases where it will open once you've defeated all the enemies in the room. Also, what the fuck was that? Eastmost Peninsula, whatever lies the secret. That actually happens a lot in this game, where you find an old man, and he says something and it doesn't make any fucking sense. There's supposed to be hints on certain things in the game, but sadly they are horribly translated, making some of them absolutely worthless. Actually making most of them absolutely worthless. Also, there really is no Peninsula or Pennsylvania, whatever in this game, it's all just Hyrule. I guess that one was supposed to hint at some sort of secret in the east, but there are plenty of secrets in this game, and how does that refer to a specific one, nor will that help me find that one. Also, in the last room we got something a lot more useful than the compass, which is the map, so now at the top we can see the layout of the dungeon. As much as I'll say that you do need a guide or a map for the overworld, I think the dungeons are actually pretty good with that. There are still occasions where you can get stuck in the dungeon, but at least it's not like the overworld where they expect you to find something where they don't even tell you there is something to find, let alone how to find it. And before some angry Zelda 1 elitists start typing in the comments, do you know how I know that this game is supposed to be played with a guide? It's because when this game first came out, they made sure to give you a guide! It's the same with Metroid 1, where the game designers knew that you needed that sort of thing, but they couldn't give you it in-game, so they made sure you had some other way. So that's why it really pisses me off when people say that you're supposed to play this game without a map of any sort. Because at that point you're purposely taking a piss all over advanced game design, because there's a reason that it evolved to the point where games always give you that sort of thing. You have nothing to prove, and the only way you're gonna find secrets through that is by pure dumb luck. Moving on from that, a few rooms ago we got a bow and... No wait, we just got a bow. We don't have arrows yet, so we can't really do anything with it. So we're gonna have to get arrows later on in one of the shops. Arrows sold separately. But here we actually get another item, which is the Boomerang. I actually do like using the Boomerang for early on in the game. It doesn't hurt enemies, but you can throw it to stun enemies and then they're easier to hit with your sword. Also make sure to watch out for the enemies in this room. These are wall masters, and when they grab you they send you back to the beginning of the dungeon, which is not nice. But using the Boomerang I make pretty quick work of them. Again, I really like using the Boomerang. It doesn't have any ammo, it has better movement than you do. It's quickly replaced by other better weapons later on, but I like using it for now more than the bombs or the arrows. Which we don't have yet. Anyway, boss time. This is Aquementus. It's a dragon thing and it shoots fireballs at you, and that's about it. It slowly moves back and forward. It's actually really easy. I mean, of course, it's the first boss in the game, but still, this is fairly easy even by first boss standards. Every time you defeat a boss you get a heart container, you reach the end of the dungeon and find one of the 8 pieces of the Triforce of Wisdom, and that's about it. That's all for part 1, hope to see you next time in part 2 of Let's Play The Legend of Zelda. See you then.